The Brotherhood of Steel could pass as the post-war United States military, only with a far more noble goal in mind than the original United States military. The Brotherhood of Steel was indirectly formed due to morally foul scientific experiments and research the US government kept sanctioning, ultimately giving them a concrete reason to desert from the US military. After settling in the Lost Hills bunker relatively close to the Mariposa military base in California, their former base, Roger Maxson, a former captain of the US Army and the leader of the distraught remnants that deserted, formed the Brotherhood of Steel. Throughout the years, this organization grew into a force to be reckoned with, but still tightly knit. Their current goal is to withhold every piece of potentially harmful and dangerous type of technology or scientific research that could set the foundation for another war of unimaginable fury. And as of 2287, the Brotherhood of Steel chapter in the Commonwealth is practically non-existent. Yet. Not if you count one righteous paladin, a diabolical knight, and a goody two-shoes scribe. During the Soul Survivor's journey through the Commonwealth, Scribe Halen, I'm talking about the goody two-shoes scribe here, releases a distress call to any nearby civilians or folk willing to help them fend off a persistent attack of feral ghouls. And if the player chooses to be a good Samaritan, Paladin Dance greets you with a harsh but reasonable tone. After the unnecessary interrogation subsides, Dance offers the player a chance to retrieve a radio transmitter that would boost the police station's radio signal. This way, they have more of a chance to contact the Citadel back in the Capital Wasteland, or any surrounding Brotherhood squadrons. After retrieving this device and undoubtedly kicking synth ass in the process, Paladin Dance offers you a place in his squadron, or rather a Brotherhood of Steel squadron. If the player accepts the offer, and upon returning to the Cambridge police station, Paladin Dance grants the player a Brotherhood rank, Initiate. But none of this really becomes relevant at first. But once the Soul Survivor progresses far enough into the main storyline, far enough where Kellogg the cereal is killed. The literal cereal. The player encounters a heavily fortified and stupidly large blimp, making its way across the Commonwealth and Boston, with large speakers protruding from each side of the blimp. And an unknown voice makes it clear to the people of the Commonwealth that the Brotherhood of Steel presents absolutely no harm to their daily lives, and that they definitely won't in the future as well. This flying fortress is the Prydwen, the future bastion of the Brotherhood of Steel in the Commonwealth. Now, considering how I just wasted a couple of your minutes trying to ease into the topic at hand, how safe is that supposed fortress? How safe is the Prydwen? During the journey to the Prydwen, either by foot or vertibird, the Prydwen sticks out drastically. This goes to show that the Brotherhood is bent on displaying force and strength before any actual conflict. They are setting a precedent for the common folk and Institute alike. In other words, the first airborne military base the post-war United States has seen. Truly an achievement. The Prydwen consists of 2 exterior areas and 2 interior areas. These are the following: the flight deck, the forecastle, the main deck, and command deck. What we're most interested in is the flight and main deck. In the case of an attack, the 2 sections that I mentioned would be crucial to the Brotherhood's overall defense of the airship. The flight deck serves as a landing bay for Brotherhood vertibirds and smaller aircraft alike, including a control room that overlooks the deck. Now, we've already noticed 2 huge variables that could change the tides of a battle swiftly, and here's why. There are 4 docking hooks attached to the flight deck, 2 on each side, and these docking hooks are immensely vulnerable to aerial, naval, and even guerrilla warfare. That is, if ground forces are equipped with missile launchers or even artillery. But remember the word artillery. We'll get to it soon enough. The flight deck itself might provide added structural integrity to the docking hooks, but without them, the flight deck is completely useless, and the only way that Brotherhood members would have an escape route is by equipping a suit of sturdy power armor and dropping down into the abyss known as the Boston Airport. Even if this were a possibility during an offensive, it would be an incredibly risky retreat. The exterior of the Prydwen seems rusty, but it's incredibly sturdy as well, and this is largely due to the amount of time and resources the Brotherhood invested into perfecting this airborne castle. The only weak point outside that I'd surely address is the one and only back wing, and this wing seems weak and would be an attacker's first point of interest, not excluding the flight deck, of course. The main chemical element keeping this ship afloat is hydrogen, a highly flammable chemical agent capable of combustion at the first sight of an explosion or flammable disturbance. In addition to this, there are 4 jet engines hanging onto 4 other pylons that keep it fully afloat. Now, moving on to the second crucial deck of the Prydwen, the main deck. It's here where the lightly armored hydrogen balloons sit, almost completely surrounding the entirety of the main deck. And if someone were to sabotage these, the Prydwen would be in a fatal position. Another advantage this sector contains is a power armor maintenance bay and military equipment vendor. All of the crude technology located in this sector serves as a quick and easy method of resupplying and maintaining their troops' power armors. And if this were to get damaged in an assault, the Brotherhood would be crippled almost instantaneously, and the hull itself might not even get penetrated entirely. But taking into consideration that the hull might not have anti-concussive measures in place, flying debris could easily turn a lovely and neat enclosure into a more than deadly trap. The command deck is considered the brain of the Prydwen, and it serves as the head connector to the main deck, also housing the bridge. This is where Lancer Captain Kells provides overwatch and maintains overall control of the Prydwen. One could say that they would be handicapped without this command center being fully operational, but the chance of someone aiming their aforementioned artillery or missiles into the front end wouldn't really hurt the Prydwen as much. Given how the Brotherhood of Steel has a wide variety of very crude and relentless enemies, all of these variables could easily be abused. Now, keeping that in mind, let's see just how creative Bethesda got with their alternate storytelling. Moving on to the Railroad. The Railroad almost solely depends on quietly infiltrating their targets, whether that be the Institute or a properly trained militarized force. The way they have gone about bringing down the Commonwealth's new behemoth is through stealth and infiltration. During one of Tinker Tom's daily sessions of daydreaming, I assume, it probably struck him that a couple of small and well-placed explosives could at least force the ship to initiate an emergency landing protocol, if not even a full-blown explosion, because hydrogen is flammable, remember? And after Tinker Tom and the player managed to wipe the Cambridge police station clean, their main focus was on the vertibird stationed on top of the roof, and this vertibird would serve as the key point of transportation to the flight deck. After successfully boarding the flight deck with a pilot that resembles a sewer rat, but we're not going to get into that, the player is instructed to wear a Brotherhood uniform as a way to infiltrate the ship tactically. But don't worry, I'm quite aware of how absurd this technique of infiltrating might seem. I mean, Brotherhood soldiers could most definitely recognize their own brethren, right? Wrong. During Elder Owen Lyon's leadership in the Capital Wasteland, the Brotherhood started recruiting people from the local populace, and this stuck with Elder Maxon as well. This means that a charismatic spy could potentially bypass most troops without even causing a slight hint of suspicion. Once the explosives are placed, Tinker Tom victoriously detonates the charges on a beach alongside the Boston airport. This turned the Prydwen into an exploding ball of debris that bombarded Liberty Prime and other troops down below in the airport. Two birds with one airborne military base, right? If the railroad spy were to get caught before even detonating the charges, Lancer Captain Kells could have initiated an emergency landing somewhere safe, someplace farther from the airport. But Tinker Tom would have caught on regardless and detonated it with or without the spy on board the hijacked vertibird. This method of destroying the Prydwen is almost soundproof. The Railroad may have a far less superior HQ than the Brotherhood, but they have done more than enough research to conclude which type of warfare they should set in motion with our boys in steel. Infantry tactics and head-on assaults are the Brotherhood's specialty, and it's something they effectively excel at. Now, this renders CQC assaults useless. Attacking troops would get melted into a finely burnt paste of laser residue immediately. Surprisingly, this is what the great minds of the Institute envisioned. A frontal assault on the checkpoint down below in the airport. Even if this were theoretically possible without the living god we call the Sole Survivor, their plan is to hack and reroute Liberty Prime to use its enormous laser beams to blow the Prydwen to bits. But by the realistic looks of it, any armies that plan on engaging the checkpoint through anything other than naval or aerial attacks would be gravely mistaken. Not to mention how countless waves of soldiers would be flooding the checkpoint from the Prydwen above. Although, teleporting Institute synths and even coursers into the hull of the Prydwen would be the most profitable solution for the Institute. Moving on to the Minutemen. A moderately powerful force that seems weak at first look, at least that's what the Brotherhood forces thought. As I mentioned previously, they have every other faction outmatched when it comes to ground combat, sheer numbers, and effective weaponry. But what they obviously didn't prepare for are other types of combat and warfare. This is showcased in every single faction quest that eventually leads to the destruction of the Brotherhood, except the Institute. But the Institute's gameplay abilities alone have been locked down by the plot, due to how immensely powerful they actually are or could be. So this time, the faction of their probable misfortune are a bunch of glorified and edgy farmers, the Minutemen. Their former and maybe even current headquarters is the castle. This is where their previous leaders found the schematics for artillery guns. They heavily utilize these artillery guns, implementing them into every single chain of settlements that were under the Minutemen's protection. But looking at how bulky the Prydwen is, one artillery cannon might not even phase the Prydwen. But an artillery barrage from 20 different directions and a dozen artillery barrages from the castle alone are to be left for the viewer's interpretation of this event. Excluding the small force of Brotherhood squads that attacked the castle during the Minutemen's offensive, not even one single Minuteman soldier lost his life on the soil of the Boston airport. Not to mention how every single time a faction manages to bring down the Prydwen, it annihilates the Boston airport and every single troop stationed down below there with it. And that should at least put a few things into perspective. To answer the title of this video, the Prydwen isn't safe at all, at least not for the various defending forces the Commonwealth unleashed on the Brotherhood. I don't have the slightest clue of who greenlit this project of creating the Prydwen, but I'm surprised as to how even the most intelligent scribe or scientist couldn't have foreseen these methods of execution coming. Anything is possible though. The Brotherhood had no real and intelligent threat to deal with after the Enclave in the Capital Wasteland. They possibly didn't or even couldn't have known what to await in the Commonwealth. Their only real threat seemed to be the Institute, and they probably relied on finding the whereabouts of the Institute in a short amount of time, just so they could launch a swift and merciless offensive. And as it turns out, this was a huge gamble. Scribes scouring the Commonwealth came up empty-handed, and if not for the sole survivors' intervention in all of this, they wouldn't have even gotten anywhere, making them and their beloved airship oblivious targets. Every single type of warfare can't be predicted or even countered. Only safe estimates of succession can properly prepare one side or the other. Come to think of it, I've noticed a recurring pattern throughout most Fallout games. Every faction has their own distinct approach to combat and warfare alike. With all of this being said, the Brotherhood definitely should have calculated a safer estimate. Even the most superb system has its crippling flaws, whether or not it's blatantly apparent. Have a good one.